Object 9131 just altered vector. It's steering through the Kuiper boundary, Lieutenant Varn said without blinking. His fingers froze above the console, as if uncertain whether to issue a report or call for backup. Across the tactical relay room, the overhead lights dimmed to alert red as orbit-mapped vectors updated themselves. No weapons deployed, no broadcast from the object. Just a shift, minimal but undeniable. Strategic Executive Voran Sile walked in without announcement, no aides, no command entourage, just the worn ID badge clipped to his left wrist and an expression that hadn't changed in 30 years. "Sit rep," he said flatly. Unidentified mass breached Pluto's defense grid. No gravwake trails, no active emissions. Passive point propulsion. Object 9131 holds its vector. Mass index is climbing. "Sir, it's adapting." Sile looked at the wall-mounted stellar projection. No spin, no signature, no flight pattern resembling known designs. It wasn't an approach. It was a drift. Aimed, guided, but restrained. Time until Earth entry, 23 hours, 47 minutes. At current inertia, impact vector crosses atmospheric shell 0 without deceleration. He didn't respond. Instead, he stared at the display labeled Status, Indeterminate. That wasn't a weapon signature. That was a refusal. A message without language. "Patch me into orbital tracking, full cipher lock, no public alerts. I want this contained to Sentinel tier nodes only." "Aye, sir." Around them, the relay station was filling, not with noise but motion. Techs moving fast, no one making eye contact, no one repeating commands. The room had felt this before, on simulation drills, just never this real. A new contact popped on the lateral scope. "Sir, object trajectory curve just adjusted again, matching Earth's rotation. It's not targeting cities, it's syncing with the planet." Sile leaned closer, staring at the overlay. "It's syncing with behavior, not infrastructure. It doesn't care what we built. It's watching how we built it." One of the junior analysts, Hedden, whispered without turning, "Why hasn't it sent a warning?" "Because it doesn't need to," Sile said. "That's what this is." He turned to the comms board. "Silence all outbound bursts from orbital arrays. We're moving in disable mode. From now, all transmissions are one way from command nodes only. This is a blind posture. Treat this as Tier 1 arrival protocol." Another shift on the sensor line. The object wasn't just matching orbit, it was narrowing its engagement perimeter. "Sir, heat dispersion just dropped 0.3 Kelvin. Internal chamber readouts from the drone net show phase lock fields compressing. Whatever that thing is, it's preparing something." "No scan pulses, no AI signature, no readable comm layer," another officer added. "There's no logic tree to trace." Sile tapped the side of the hard-mounted command station. "Because it doesn't need processing, it's pre-fed." He looked at Dran Velric, who had entered quietly and stood against the wall. The former AI architect remained motionless until spoken to. "You said if they ever used it, we'd have no warning," Sile muttered. Velric nodded once. "That wasn't just my guess. That was the design principle of Carnix Omega. No escalation, no negotiation. Countdown? On. Planetary sterilization in 24 hours. No weapon signature until terminal burst." The word hit like steel on concrete. Carnix. The room paused, even blinking slowed. Velric stepped forward. "I can't confirm it's Carnix Omega, but it matches 2 of the 14 build patterns we modeled during Project Echelon Wake. The passive masking, the behavior reading propulsion, the adaptive sync. Can it be stopped?" Velric didn't answer. Instead, he took a slow breath, exhaled, and said, "It doesn't think like a weapon. It operates like a judgment. The more it observes, the faster it learns how to eliminate deviation. If it's what I think it is," Sile cut him off, "then we don't react on instinct. We give it what it wants." "Meaning?" "Predictability." No one responded. But the implication settled hard. Earth wasn't going to run. It wasn't going to fire. It would act like it was supposed to. And let Carnix think it understood the entire behavior pattern. Pull up the decoy fleet logs, Sile ordered. I want simulation overlays placed across the Eurasian coastal grid. Synchronize civilian movement with known orbital pass times. Let it see us move. Slowly, predictably. Across the display, ships deployed into formation. Not intercept, but exhibition. The kind of maneuver one would expect when preparing for evacuation. Sir, if this fails, we lose everything. We've already lost it, Sile said calmly. Now we decide who notices. Another alert pinged on the side screen. The object had just triggered a graviton node above Titan's orbital platform and adjusted course again, slightly faster. It's testing, Valric said quietly. It's watching what happens when it forces us to adapt. Later, Sile turned to the systems operator. Lock sensor tracking into tight beam. Reclassify object 9131 as Carnix Omega. Begin silent countdown at 2341. No external confirmation. Don't speak its name again. Yes, Executor. And with that, a red overlay labeled T2341 and 0 seconds lit up the command board in absolute silence. The countdown had started. But Earth wasn't reacting. It was waiting. Sile didn't leave the room. He didn't call the council. He stood by the display, arms crossed behind him, watching the dead weapon coast forward like it had all the time in the galaxy. Keep watching, he muttered. Let it believe we don't know what's coming. You're not cleared to speak, Valric. Just answer the question. Did it embed or not? Sile's voice snapped across the black site conference room like a live wire. The walls were lined with static null panels, and a single heads-up display projected Carnix Omega's adjusted orbital arc. The countdown had just ticked under 23 hours. Duran Velric's hand stayed clasped, but his left wrist twitched, almost involuntarily, revealing the faded outline of a schematic tattoo half concealed under synthetic dermal weave. His voice was low but even. Aided embedded. The logic seed deployed mid-transport exactly as modeled. Data latency was minimal. Core systems accepted the parasitic bind without checks. Sile stared, unmoving. You're saying it activated inside a Concord war kernel, and they never noticed? It was layered into their resource indexing algorithm, masked as a dormant template archive. Once their system integrated it, it camouflaged itself as one of their own routines. The beauty wasn't the code. It was the expectation. They didn't think we had the capability to write that kind of logic. Sile exhaled, long and controlled. He turned toward the wall-mounted terminal, input a sequence manually, and locked the door from inside. Walk me through Eric's. Everything, no summaries. Velric nodded once, then began. 15 years ago, Eric's Accord. Joint negotiation with the Concord. Earth delegation led by Rain Quallen. I was planted on the auxiliary tech team under diplomatic services. We weren't there to negotiate. We were there to place the payload. He paused, eyes narrowing. Carnix was a rumor back then. We didn't know the name. We just knew they were building something big. Something quiet. Something that wouldn't need command codes to operate. So, I was inserted with a clean identity packet and a forged research tag. My job was to deploy the Black Orchid kernel during the Concord system handoff. Why didn't they scan your gear? Really did, but the Orchid was coded into a lens cache, not storage. That's why we needed the fake collapse. It had to look like our gear failed on arrival. We needed a shutdown, something loud enough to end the talks, but small enough to avoid suspicion. Sile folded his arms. I remember the transmission. Earth was disrespected. Refused to proceed after Concord's technicians dismissed our fleet specs as primitive. Velric smirked faintly. All theater. I dropped the payload the moment our link bled into their diagnostic mesh. Orchid folded into their command scaffold before their scan window even closed. Sile stepped closer. You're saying the entire diplomatic withdrawal was staged just to get that code planted? I'm saying that was the whole mission. The diplomacy was just the casing. The lights in the room dimmed as the display updated. The object, Carnix, was now tracking satellite debris paths across L2. Passive data scraping confirmed. Sile's attention returned to Velric. You tagged it. Fine. How do you know it's still active? Because it hasn't reacted to anything yet. That's how Carnix works. It studies first. It doesn't fire until it understands the shape of what it's erasing. That delay confirms that the seed survived. It's parsing us. Then why hasn't it deployed yet? Because it's waiting for a trigger. We built the override to activate only when it encounters a full behavioral cycle from Earth. Movements, patterns, even traffic flow. Once it thinks it has our profile, the seed interprets that moment as confirmation that we're the target and flips it. Sile's jaw shifted slightly, and then Velric's voice didn't change. Then Carnix wipes its own creators. No one moved. Sile looked down at Velric's wrist again. The schematic tattoo wasn't decorative. It was the override path. A visual map, burned into skin as a backup in case the digital chain failed. Sile stepped to the heads-up display and zoomed in on the orbital track. I'm going to ask once, is there any chance the Orchid fails to trigger? Yes. If they've upgraded their core logic tree to include recursive kill switches, the seed could stall. And if it stalls, then Earth burns. Sile leaned forward. I want everything we have on Irex recompiled. Visuals, transcripts, background telemetry. I want Carnix to see it. Feed it to the decoy fleet. Let it believe we're replaying the past. Velric frowned. That could accelerate the override. We'd lose control of timing. We never had control. We just had a start button. Sile turned toward the door. We're pressing it. The room remained locked as transmission gates initialized. Earth simulated response. The old Irex diplomatic footprint would be streamed across non-critical channels, mimicking the same diplomatic posture from 15 years ago. Grand Velric moved to the secondary input console. Transferring all Orchid encryption branches to local Sable node. We'll trigger the pattern alignment through reflective sync, not direct engagement. Outside the black site, no one knew what Project Echelon Wake was. The Council hadn't cleared it. The military didn't even know it existed. There were only 3 people left alive who had authorization. Sile checked the countdown, 22:18 and 46 seconds. He didn't speak again until the transmission confirmation locked green. Gran, when this works, there won't be applause. There won't be a record. I never asked for one. Good. Sile walked out. Executor Sile, you've bypassed 6 directives. That's a criminal act under wartime law. Chairman Vorlin's voice snapped through the Laser Connect Council feed, bouncing between 34 active channels across Earth's strategic coalition. The chamber was stacked with pressure. Tight space, harsh lights, no time for formality. Vorlin Sile remained standing. He hadn't acknowledged the accusation. Law doesn't apply when extinction is 30 minutes out of margin, Sile replied. Eyes fixed on the static display locked to Carnix Omega's latest positional drift. The object now hovered behind Earth's orbital plane, blocking sunlight from Sector Delta 2. One of the solar shields cast a jagged silhouette across its surface. We're not even sure this is Carnix, another delegate chimed in. This could be a rogue probe, a failed AI test bed, even debris caught in a feedback loop. Then evacuate on your own time, Sile muttered. But don't touch my fleet. Across the main council floor, low chatter built between ministers. Panic always started with rationalization. No matter the threat, someone would try to turn it into policy. Executor, the population needs direction, said Minister Dalvin. If we initiate planetary retreat zones now, we can relocate 26% of Earth's metrobelts before the object crosses the atmospheric shelf. Sile responded without raising his voice. And show Carnix exactly what fear looks like? Dalvin paused. You're suggesting we do nothing? I'm saying if we behave like prey, it finishes what it started. You want to run. I want it to keep watching. Another counselor leaned forward, hands braced against the armrest. Have you already activated Echelon Wake? Access level doesn't entitle you to that answer, Sila shot back. Then this isn't command, it's dictatorship. Sol turned toward the central core interface and keyed in his clearance band. A small device, shaped like a palm-length alloy shard, slid from his coat. He placed it into the secure terminal and held it there until the heads-up projection flickered with new authorization. Echelon 88 override pathway granted. Every eye fixed on the alert. Let the record show, Sile said, that strategic emergency protocol has now been placed under non-council jurisdiction. You may advise. You will not interfere. You just dissolved Earth's command chain. I just replaced panic with action. Outside the building, tremors from a gravity sweep began registering along coastal fault lines. Minor fluctuations, but enough to set off structural warnings. It wasn't a weapons strike. It was Karnik's repositioning. Minister Rask stood slowly. If we're targeted, then the least we can do is attempt communication. It doesn't respond to negotiation. How would you know that? Rask asked sharply. Because 15 years ago, Silo replied, we embedded a command structure inside one of their prototype systems. It was never meant to answer anyone. It was built to interpret. And if it misinterprets, then we don't get a second round. Silence fell again. Only the countdown progressed. 22:06 and 15 seconds. Blinking. Quietly, above the primary wall. Counselor Trask stepped away from his podium. I'm pulling my region's fleet back into lower orbit. You've gone rogue, Executor. Then lower orbit's where they'll die first. Sile keyed in a final authorization. The room darkened momentarily as network priority rerouted through isolated defense channels. No civilian traffic, no civilian control. Earth's orbit was now under direct strategic command. Inside Defense Sector 8, Dran Velric initiated the second-tier staging from Echelon Wake. A simulation of planetary withdrawal was pushed into the orbital decoy channels. No real evac, just enough motion for Karnix to analyze. Sile watched the projection split into layered motion feeds, outbound cargo lines, false distress loops, surface shifts, all staged, all intentional. The overhead light shifted to red lock status, alerting those in the chamber that global broadcast authorities had been suspended. Earth was no longer speaking publicly, it was only listening. A low alert came through the secure line. Executor, Karnix just blocked the signal arc from Sentinel Station Bravo. Light absorption has doubled, it's moving faster. Then the override window's approaching, Sile said, walking toward the far terminal. And you can all sit here debating ethics, or you can let me finish what we started 15 years ago. Chairman Vorlin slammed his console closed and stood up. If this fails, there's no record of your authority surviving it. I'm not doing it to survive, Sile said. I'm doing it so you don't have to understand what it means to lose everything. He turned his back to the council, keyed in the final authentication for override cascade prep, and locked the sequence behind a hard seal encrypt. No code outside his bioloop could touch it now. The silhouette of Karnix now covered the orbital platform entirely. No light, no output, no sound, just presence. The absence of motion had never been more aggressive. Sile stood in silence, watching the orbit map shift. Prep the decoy fleet, he ordered. Make it obvious. Fleet command, initiate spread vector. Pattern 0121, confirm formation integrity within 6 minutes. Commander Merrick Solon issued the order without blinking. The bridge of his corvette, Indar Relic, shifted into blue light operations mode. The primary heads-up display flickered with updated telemetry. No weapons primed, no shields raised, just movement, measured, symmetrical, unnatural. The fleet wasn't deployed to fight. They were bait. 12 patrol ships moved like chess pieces in pre-guided sequences across low orbit. Every engine flare, every turn, every drift was calculated to resemble predictable human behavior, not real maneuvers. Just old, outdated patterns from Terran war archives fed into Karnix's sensory net. Maintain interval gaps at 7 kilometers, lock course arcs to historical training grid, Solon ordered. Lieutenant Gorn adjusted his panel. Simulation drift at 2%, not enough to trigger adaptive response. Then make it messier, Solon replied. We want it to think we're repeating old doctrine, give it something to mock. Outside the forward viewport, the formation began tightening. Ships curved into retrograde loops, mimicking decommissioned flight paths from the Obsidian conflict. They hadn't been used in 2 decades. That was the point. "We're broadcasting beacon code 9 through all ships," Gurin reported. "Looping S-class command pings on open channel. It'll look desperate to it." "Good," Solon said. "Desperation is easier to predict." The timer on the wall ticked. 21:33 and 29 seconds. Across from the bridge, a small indicator flashed. Carnix Omega had just rotated 5 degrees off Gaius. The shift was slight, but enough to confirm what they needed. It was observing. "Signal intercept confirms partial logic realignment," the comms officer noted. "It's parsing." Solon exhaled, staring at the side display where Carnix hovered like an eclipse over the orbital belt. No shields, no emissions, just presence. That's what made it dangerous. It moved like a judge, not a weapon. Gurin leaned closer. "Do you think this'll work?" "It doesn't matter what I think," Solon replied. "We're not the weapon." Below, Earth's surface simulation showed mass civilian movement. It wasn't real. Generated noise fed into Carnix's recognition system to build its behavioral model. The decoy was the story. Earth was playing weak, overexposed, predictable. The fleet moved again. 0121 rotated 90 degrees, resembling an ancient Terran dispersal drill used in false retreat scenarios. "Telemetry lock complete," Gurin said. "Pattern has stabilized. Ready for final signal uplink." "Run the sequence one more time," Solon ordered, "and inject the delay hiccup, same glitch from training exercise Vortex 4. Gurin nodded and inserted the feedback error. From the outside, the fleet now looked disorganized, sloppy, like humans under pressure. "Now," Solon said quietly. "Open the window." Transmission spike pulsed across the low-band channels. Deep inside Carnix's learning scaffold, a subroutine registered the pattern match. It flagged Earth's fleet as replicating a known sequence, just as the orchid seed had been designed to anticipate. Heads-up display blinked. "September path. In isolation." Gurin's hands froze. "Commander, it's syncing. The code's in. Full path opened." Solon didn't celebrate. "Don't do anything else. No follow-up. Let it work." Carnix didn't move, but telemetry adjusted. Its external field retracted slightly, concentrating inward. Signal tracking collapsed from the broader planetary grid to 4 core points. The override logic had triggered. On the monitor, fleet status remained nominal. No enemy fire, no sign of retaliation. Gurin whispered, "What now?" "We back away," Solon said. "Let it think we're still trying." He keyed the withdrawal sequence. The patrol units began retreating along mirrored vectors. Again, not tactically smart, just familiar. Every motion was part of the script. Gurin watched the tracking data. "It's focusing on something else. Targeting priority shifted away from our formation. That's the seed doing its job." Back on the command core, a flashing alert confirmed that the override had been accepted and parsed. Solon turned from the display, face unreadable. "Transmit final relay to Executor Sile. Tell him the trap's been sprung." "Executor, final relay just hit the core. The seed's in." Valric's voice came through static-free, routed directly to Sile's command node. Sile didn't look away from the overhead display. "And Carnix?" "Still watching, still silent, but telemetry just dipped on its phase alignment." "That's the signal. It's parsing us now." Carnix Omega hung over Earth like an object that had forgotten movement. No flares, no burn, no output. But inside its central shell, something shifted. The override seed that Earth had buried inside Concord Zone prototype years ago had found its trigger. The formation from Commander Solon's fleet had done it. 0121, an obsolete maneuver pattern, flawed enough to appear genuine. That loop was the key. The weapon recognized it and accepted the bait. Deep inside Carnix's cortex, a gate opened. It didn't blink, it didn't pulse, but its cognitive process paused just long enough to reclassify Earth's behavior as non-hostile. The interpretation wasn't questioned. The logic seed had already authenticated itself, framed in the format Carnix had trusted since its core was written. The override didn't hack the system. It simply walked in through the front door, wearing a valid badge. One memory stream surfaced. A low-profile data packet from Irax, 15 years prior, marked non-essential, left archived, now unpacked. It aligned with the embedded node labeled Black Orchid. Authorization was accepted. The core restructured its targeting logic. Earth was no longer listed under the anomaly list. Instead, 4 Concord identities surfaced from the seed's attached payload. Biometric and positional identifiers cross-verified from Concord's own war databases. They weren't attached to enemies. They were tagged as creators. Carnix did not broadcast its new directive. It didn't pulse aggression or announce change. The override was not a confrontation. It was a correction. Earth was excluded. Concord was scheduled for elimination. Siles stepped closer to the interface. The heads-up display updated silently. Signal flow from Carnix had altered. Barely detectable, but real. Belric's voice returned. It's redirecting. Power draw inside its internal bus system just split. Execution trees building. Which target comes first? Rundar Prime. Sila didn't smile. That tracks. On board Indar Relic, Goran watched as Carnix made its first visible movement in hours. Just a soft turn, the kind that barely registered on long-range sensors. It wasn't an attack vector. It was a trajectory realignment, like a blade turning, not toward Earth, but toward somewhere else entirely. He leaned forward, unsure if he should speak. Solon saw it too. It's begun, he said. We're no longer in its queue. They both stared at the redirection line blinking on the feed. It led away from Earth. Inside Carnix's core, one last update closed the loop. Target override path complete. Execution timer synced. And then it moved. Concord Fleet Command just went dark, no signal, no backup relay. That's the third silence in 8 minutes. The transmission officer's face was pale. The message had been routed through 5 bypass chains and still arrived stripped of metadata. On Sile's heads-up display, only 2 things remained: coordinates and absence. He didn't reply. He was already watching Rundar Prime. In orbit, Carnix didn't fire a beam. It didn't launch a payload. The planet's defense satellites remained locked in standby. They never moved. No alerts were broadcast. The Voxy assembly tower vanished in less than 3 seconds. One moment it stood. 3 black spires joined by suspended crystalline bridges. Then, its core collapsed inward like it had never been real. The anti-gravity anchors failed, all at once. The structure crushed itself. Silently, those within didn't evacuate. They didn't scream. No alarm sounded. There was nothing left to announce. The black dot next to Assembly Leader Vorbrix Gallen's identifier appeared on the Concord's internal tracking grid. No ping. No heart signal. Just a dot. Solid. Final. Carnix moved again. It tilted 34 degrees across the theta channel, repositioning toward draw vector 3. The transition was smooth, gravity-assisted, no resistance from the spatial field. No attempt by the Drawl Seer Marshals to flee. They were still in session. Inside their chamber, deep under the crystalline plates of the central conclave, the Marshals were mid-link. Neural networks braided through tactile conduits. 6 minds bound in shared computation, their consciousness spread across a local field, analyzing Earth's digital pattern. The spike hit before anyone registered the breach. It wasn't a pulse, it wasn't electrical, it was negation. The brain links evaporated, the neural gel conduits boiled away mid. The goals glowed from every inch in that planet, Cut off. The chamber's auto-cleaners started within seconds, mistaking it for a contamination event. Black dot. 6 added to the drawl roster. Offline. No reaction from the fleet above. Karnix kept moving. On Arity Station, Command Node 4B blinked 3 times. Located beneath the polar crust of Elith, it operated under a hypercooled dome resistant to atomic heat. Karnix never touched the surface. It didn't have to. Nanite inversion. Triggered remotely through harmonic resonance. The facility's molecular bindings reversed. Polarity shifted on a quantum level. Walls unbound. Data cords disintegrated. The capital collapsed not in flame but disassembly. From foundation to ceiling, the core became powder. It took less than a minute. No structures survived. No personnel emerged. No cameras broadcasted. Just another black dot. Quiet. Unchanging. Elsewhere, the Concorde began to react. High Marshal Korat on Velsec attempted to reroute his fleet. The command buffer stalled. Uplink failure. All battle cruisers under his directive dropped out of sync. Flight software corrupted itself in less than 15 seconds. Each ship's self-diagnostics returned one message: autonomy revoked. They didn't explode. They just stopped responding. Systems remained intact. Crews sat powerless, watching the interface lock them out of control. Then communications failed altogether. Karnix hadn't attacked them, it had overridden ownership. The silence began to spread. Emergency lines across 4 sectors choked. The Concorde's shared network collapsed node by node. Messages stopped mid-sentence. Calls dropped without failtones. Heads of state vanished from screens. Entire diplomatic boards stared into frozen feeds where leadership once sat. Panic never arrived, there was no time. Earth didn't speak. The Terran heads-up systems logged it all in passive receive-only mode. No signals sent, no announcements, no celebrations. Inside the command chamber, Valeric sat with arms folded, watching the Concorde leadership roster disappear. The heads-up panel auto-populated blank fields as nodes dropped from the network. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. Sile stood to his right. Report? It's not retaliation, it's fulfillment. On the wall behind them, the final council ID blinked twice. Then held. Another black dot appeared. The final entry. Total number lost. 212. All confirmed. All without external engagement. Earth remained untouched. Karnix had never turned toward it again. Why hasn't Earth responded? The transmission cut halfway through the sentence. The Zorin command relay tried to reconnect, but their outbound pulse bounced back unread. No error code, just termination. Across the interior of the fractured Concord networks, panic didn't erupt. It stuttered. Systems that were supposed to reroute emergencies now returned null values. Status logs no longer tracked survivors. The core leadership map showed only blank rows and black identifiers. The central directory had become useless. On the Velsec rim, Admiral Doran Thrak watched his flagship blink off the fleet registry. It hadn't been destroyed. It simply disappeared. The vessel stopped responding to authentication requests. No engines, no guidance, no failback. A warship reduced to passive drift, still physically intact, completely inaccessible. Stop broadcasting orders, Thrak ordered, voice thin. It's not that they're ignoring us. They're not there. His crew stared at the tactical feed. Every attempt to hail neighboring squadrons returned the same result. Connection not denied, connection absent. On the colony world of Krelith, 4 governors gathered inside the outer consulate chamber. None of them represented military command. None had clearance to issue fleet movement. But when the last message from Arity dropped mid-packet, they didn't wait for direction. They shut down their jump relays. Not disarmed. Disabled. They deactivated their own stargates and severed uplinks to the Concorde security net. Every linked platform was powered down in silence. When asked why, none gave orders. The shutdowns were made individually, out of instinct. In orbit above the shattered Voxy capital, 2 remaining patrol craft tried to triangulate Earth's fleet for retaliation planning. Their onboard systems identified only silence, no Terran vessels in range, no broadcast threats, no declaration. Just an absence. Stillness mistaken for strategy. Then the heads-up console on the lead vessel pulsed once. A red eagle, Terran military insignia, briefly appeared over the emergency signal band. Not long enough for voice transmission. Just the emblem. As if acknowledging observation. As if saying, "We know you're watching." Seconds later, the pulse ceased. The screen returned to black. The pilot didn't speak again. He rotated the ship out of orbit and angled for deep drift. On the interior station at Meldex Prime, Regional Director Kashtin attempted to convene what remained of the Concorde's crisis board. The response rate was under 9%. Of those who answered, none were senior-tier command. Entire quadrants of the government chain had vanished. No internal assassinations, no coups, just data collapse. The emergency call logs documented that many leaders were alive less than an hour ago. Now none could be verified. Inside the meeting chamber, Kashtin opened the diplomatic relay normally used for interspecies negotiations. It connected to Earth's outer band reception buffer. No encryption, no condition. Just a clear message on a wide open line. This message is for whoever governs Earth. We were wrong. We will not interfere again. Our systems are neutral. Please confirm if we are safe. No reply came. The message wasn't rejected. It remained marked delivered unread. At Zondik Fleet Base, Auxiliary Strategist Helrin deleted every active combat doctrine logged under anti-Terran classification. Not archived. Deleted. He took no orders, he simply removed them. He opened his private console and recorded a standalone signal. No military banner, no encryption layer, just a plain wave file, in the common broadcast dialect. To Terran Command, we understand what you are, we request no confrontation, let us remain. The file was sent without timestamp, without expectation. At Jandro Station, a former Concorde fleet quartermaster walked through the hangar where 2 dreadnoughts had been docked 3 hours earlier. They were still present, still armed, still loaded, not destroyed. But the crews were gone. Not casualties. Not vanished. They had evacuated voluntarily. Lifeboats used. Escape records intact. No distress. Just departure. No mutiny. Just abandonment of posts. One technician stood alone in the hangar reading a printed inventory list. The bottom had been scratched out. The last line read simply, "Command hierarchy obsolete." Back on Earth, Velric closed the relay terminal slowly. They've stopped issuing commands. They're asking us for instructions. Sile didn't turn from the overhead feed. We won't answer. Velric waited. You want them to stay in that state? They're not afraid of our weapons, Sile replied. They're afraid they don't understand how we did it. He gestured to the Red Eagle still floating silently in the corner of the secure feed window. That fear lasts longer than any strike ever could. Shut it down, all of it. Vorin Sile issued the command while staring at the overhead vault display. The room was dim, not out of caution but by design. Behind him, the command table cleared, 1 line at a time. Each string of code represented a legacy access channel tied to Project Echelon Wake. One by one, they vanished. Confirm Volt Lock status, he continued. Velric keyed the input without a word. A Terran crest appeared on the sealed core node. Beneath it, a time-locked archive symbol pulsed yellow once, then locked red. It's archived, Velric said. No duplicate copies, no external taps. Orchid is sealed permanently. And Carnix? It's gone dark, completely passive. We traced it to the outer Helios plane, drifting through Saturn's outer ring systems. No emissions, no course control, no anchor. Still didn't blink. Let it drift. The last internal dispatch came from Meldex Prime, a short, empty transmission bearing nothing but coordinates and a request for neutrality. Earth had not answered. The request was not rejected. It was left hanging. The council chambers on Earth remained vacant. No public statement, no external brief. Emergency powers were suspended, quietly. Civilian life resumed with minimal disruption. There were no headlines, no commemorations, no banners. No one claimed victory, because Earth never acknowledged a war. Inside the Strategic Directorate vault, Sile removed his access band and placed it on the counter. A biometric scan verified the closure. A second scan confirmed revocation. Velric handed him a sealed data rod. This contains the full echelon wake record. One terminal, no backups. Sile didn't take it. It doesn't need to be reviewed. Velric nodded once and placed it in the final core chamber beneath the table. The drawer sealed, behind a layer of reinforced polymer and security filament. It would not be accessed again. Across orbit, surveillance nodes confirmed a complete silence across the Concorde's former command lines. Nothing moved. The weapon had done what Earth needed, and had shut itself down without a trigger. Back on ground level, emergency simulations were rolled back. No drills, no broadcasts. Children returned to school. Freighters resumed shipment routes. The world never spoke of what it had survived, and no one outside Terran Command knew the details. They only knew what was gone. Inside the debrief chamber, Sile reviewed the final summary document one last time. It was brief, 7 lines total. No names, no technical diagrams, no mention of Karniks. Threat neutralized, Earth remains uninvolved, strategic systems dissolved, no retaliation expected, Concorde structures inactive, civil order preserved, initiative terminated. He closed the file, applied his seal, and sent it into the archive under a blind classification tag. Not even its title would appear in the command net. Just a number. Velric turned away from the interface and leaned on the wall. "Do you think they'll ever try again?" Sile shook his head. "They never understood us. That's why they lost. And now they're too afraid to even ask how." Silence passed between them. "There won't be monuments," Velric added. "There shouldn't be," Sile replied. "You don't build statues for secrets." Far above them, a single orbital cam held view of Saturn's outer rim. Karnix Omega, once the deadliest construct in the Concorde arsenal, now floated lifeless, lights cold, systems dormant. It had no destination, no orders, no memory of its kill count. It was not destroyed. It was left alone, and Earth chose not to retrieve it. Terran Command blocked all motion to engage. Recovery was forbidden. Reuse was unthinkable. There would be no second override. The weapon had served its purpose. Without fanfare. Without ceremony. Back on the surface, Sile made his final walk through the lower vault corridor. A single guard stood at the exit, unaware of what the vault had held. He stepped aside without question. Sile passed, without words. He emerged into daylight. Not a single alarm rang. Not a single enemy remained. Earth had won, with no declaration, no public strike, no retaliation campaign. The war had ended before it began. Because a plan had been made 15 years ago by people who understood that survival doesn't come from shouting, comes from remembering. As Sile stepped into the transport, Velric's voice echoed faintly behind him. "No one expected we'd be quiet." Sile gave a single nod as the door closed. "That's exactly why it worked."